somebody from community created a plugin for UptimeRobot into the Home Assistant. And what I'm doing right now, for example, is that if my website go down, my light in my room just starts to flashing.
Hey friends, this is Podcast Ruined by Software Engineer. I am Perry Tiu, and on this episode I get to talk to Tomas Koprusak, Chief Product Officer at UptimeRobot, an array of uptime monitoring services catering to over 2 million users across the world, with a team of only 6 engineers. If you enjoy Podcast Ruined by Software Engineer, don't forget to hit the follow button on your podcast app so you don't miss out on the new episodes. And you can pick up podcast merch at perrytiu.com/shop. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Podcast Ruined by Software Engineer. I'm your host, Perry, and today with me is Tomas Koprusak, CPO at UptimeRobot. Tomas, how are you today?
I'm great, thanks.
To say that, I'm excited to ask you so many questions. First thing for UptimeRobot, you have like 8 different products on your website. Not only that, but also you have a following of people that actually is so vocal about the things that you do, that thing that you guys build. I can't wait to get into, everything about UptimeRobot. But even before that, just so that we have context and maybe just, give a chance to situate ourselves. Maybe like a 30-second thing. But who is Tomas and what exactly is UptimeRobot?
As you said, I'm working as a CPO at UptimeRobot. And my daily job is to make sure that the service that we are providing is running up and well. And the service that we are providing, the UptimeRobot, is actually software used for monitoring a website or cron jobs or whatever you have. And it's just making sure that everything is running smoothly and all your systems are up and running.
And running smoothly is the hardest job in software engineering. Like keeping things in check is definitely one of the hardest role out there. So I definitely could imagine. We'll dive into it, of course, the incident management and how to even run products, how to even see like different features coming in. We're definitely going to jump into that. Before I go too deep into this, CPO, I know I've said it. I know you've said it. Chief Product Officer for the people that don't use that term a lot. I don't even use that term a lot, but don't get it mistaken for, C3PO or something, CPO, Chief Product Officer, and that's definitely the domain we're going to dive into. So, but of course, before we get into all of that, maybe even this is more Perry. I'm always interested about this stuff, but the background matters in the sense of like you have quite an extensive career. You've jumped into different roles, not just product, but different parts of it. But even, I don't know if there was an influence early on in terms of like, where did you grow up? Was it techie? Like what did that look like? Where was home to you?
My background is not techie at all. I was raised in Hajtacz, which is a small region in Slovakia. It's a beautiful nature there and everything, but nothing too techie there. Even my parents, they were both cooks. So, no technical influence from them. And as I was growing up, we didn't even have a computer at home. So, I had really no technical influence in my childhood whatsoever. I had my first computer when I was 17, actually. And even then, it was without the internet or anything. We were just changing games with friends on a floppy disks. And that was basically it.
That is amazing. I feel like the way you were saying how it's like, that background isn't really there, the non-techie background. But I feel like the way I see it is if you didn't spend the time to look at so many gadgets early on in your life. I know some kids, like even for me when I was growing up, like Tamagotchis, and you have like these Bop Its, and you have like these Game Boys coming up. That filled some of my time, right? Everybody has 100% of their time, and that took a good chunk of it. So even from your background, as you were saying, like you didn't have that much exposure to technology from back then. What else filled your time then? Because, we all have 24 hours in a day. So maybe was there hobbies? Was there anything that was maybe not literally technical, but something that you were doing? Maybe like helping out in the kitchen, for example, that has like an operational side to it. I'm just making this up, but maybe anything that you could share in terms of what did take your time when you were growing up.
As a kid, as I said, it was a beautiful nature all around. So I was riding a bike a lot at the time, and I still am, actually. I was always fixing those bikes and trying to even repaint them and build them from scratch. So that was basically my biggest hobby at the time. Also, from the techie perspective, maybe what we had at home was the old Sega. It was actually a ripoff of Sega. It wasn't even the actual one. But it was just hooked to the TV and we were playing those duck hunts and stuff like that. And that was amazing. I loved that. But my parents were always like, don't spend too much time and don't sit too close to the TV. So yeah, I mean, most of the time I was on my bike actually, but whenever there was raining or anything, I was just sitting next to my Sega and playing that.
That's so cool. No matter what country you're from, no matter what part of the world, your parents are going to tell you to stop doing whatever the cool thing is during our generation at that time. So that's absolutely hilarious on that. And shout out to Sega. I believe like we didn't have one. Our neighbor had one, and it was a lot of Sonic. I don't know if it's because Sonic and Sega are like just super tight together, but I remember, I don't know if you came across Sonic when you were young, but that was definitely something that hit me from back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fun part is you already mentioned it. Your first computer. This is something that I just want to like double click on because everybody's first computer, whether you intentionally or didn't intentionally join the Apple family early on back then, or even like the Windows family or the Linux family or whatever it is back then. But maybe my two-part question here is, I guess, what exactly was your first computer, even though you were saying it was a little bit in your teenage years. And the second part that I probably am way more interested is how in the world did you get your hands on it? Just because I know everybody had it different. So maybe those, that two-part question.
I mean, we always wanted a computer. I mean, I had also older brother, and we were always like asking parents, buy us something, we want to play with that and stuff like that. But at the time, we didn't even have an internet or anything, so it was really just an expensive toy. So yeah, I mean, the first computer we had was actually pretty late. It was already running Windows XP. So yeah, I mean, I don't have like those great times spent with the Atari or anything like that. And yeah, it was a Windows machine, and it had a dedicated graphics card with 512 megabytes of memory, if I remember correctly. That it was amazing. It was like this almost gaming PC, you would say today. And yeah, it was great. I mean, we've been always playing some Need for Speeds on that and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, without the internet, we've been always struggling to get something to do on that computer. So yeah.
That is so cool. Even the Need for Speed. Would you say like a lot of influence was like international then? Because the way I see it is that like even when I was growing up in Canada, like we got our influences from of course America, from England, and like that was through the box, the computer. So for you, was it really, I guess, like your moment of like internalization to be like, oh wait, they do it like this over there? Or was it already existing as part of like your neighborhood? Other people were already talking about it. Like how did you connect? How did you feel that connection to the world? Was it obvious, or was it more like, I don't know, mind-blowing, where it's like, no way?
Since there was no internet, as I said, I mean, there was an internet, but we just didn't have that at home. It was always like just from the close group of friends, and someone from the group always somehow gets to something. So it was really just very, very local. And actually, Titan are quite close to Poland. And all these guys used to go there and to get the content, the games, the music, everything there, because it was then cheap there and everything was available there.
No, absolutely on that. And especially how I was saying, like, yeah, just find every gadget. So you kind of like floppy disk or CDs or whatever you could like get from everywhere. This is so relatable. Like, as I keep on saying that, it's something that once you see the initial part of technology, it's a bit cumbersome, and it's massive influence no matter what. I keep on saying like that. Did you manage to express any of that, I guess, like through your studies, in the sense of like a lot of people think about like sciences, a lot of people, first time I ever did coding, I think I was maybe like 15, and there was like a 3-hour like thing where some math teacher's like side project was like, oh, let's teach everybody a bit of coding, and that was like my 3-hour exposure. And then like maybe 8 years later or whatever it is, that's when I started at university. I'll be like, I'll do comp sci. So like I had a big gap between the first time I did it. But for you though, in terms of education, was there any moments where you got exposed to maybe, I guess, like a bit of coding, or even just any classes that were just not the, I guess, regular curriculum of what you were doing? So was it mostly sciences? Was it mostly history? Like education, academia-wise, what did that look like?
I mean, during the high school, we had actually one class dedicated to computer science, but it was very, very basic. I mean, we've been just learning how to work with Microsoft Word and stuff like that, and it was really extremely basic. And I always wanted to do something more with that. So that's at school, actually, we had the internet, so I downloaded some old version of Pascal, and I was just playing with that at home, and I just tried to create something like chatbot, let's say. So just something that would really answer your silly questions, but it was all just predefined and all the answers, and it was just looking for the keyword and answering based on that. So that's maybe where it all started. Then I just as I was playing on the internet, I was discovering more and more websites, and I was thinking like, hey, that's something that looks then interesting. So I was like, how do you create one website? How do you just prepare something? And I started to do some very basic HTML and inline CSS and stuff like that. And that's where I created my first website. I mean, it was not hosted anywhere. It was just really living on my floppy disk, and I was just always improving that. But yeah, I mean, that's where it all started. Then I went to university. I actually didn't finish the university, but I went to applied informatics. So it was like really technical university. And we've been learning some coding and programming there, but it was still, I would say, quite basic. I mean, we've been just developing websites that were table-based at the time where there were already some frameworks existing. So I got bored pretty soon. And then when I dropped off, I started actually working with the computers and with the website development. Even with my limited knowledge, it was just enough to get to the corporation and start working on something and learn things. So yeah.
That curiosity really picked you from that point to a very far point after that. Because I mean, like, even the concept of like building a chatbot, in terms of like, if I was in your shoe, I definitely understand the interest. I definitely understand to be like, oh, you could just like throw things at it. It might spit something out after and everything. But maybe I just want to take the opportunity, because I look back at this question a lot to myself in terms of like, how did I learn how to use XYZ technology before it was ever available, right? Nowadays, if you think about modern processes, like sure, ask ChatGPT, or some people still rely on Stack Overflow and all that. And even how did you save your code back then? As we're saying, like on a floppy disk, nowadays like GitHub or whatever it is hosted on the cloud. So how did you, I guess, learn more about the languages, whether it's Pascal, whether it's everything? Were you just relying on Google? Did you go to library to get books? Like what was that? I guess like what resources were available to you to keep on learning, or was it just build more things and eventually you just learn more by trial and error?
I mean, it was a combination of those things, I would say. I mean, since we didn't have the internet at home, I was like just trying to get as much as I could at school or in the internet cafes at the time, and just really trying to find new technologies, new possibilities there. And also from books. I mean, I went just to a library and rented a book and was just trying to fiddle around with that. So, I mean, it was very limited. I mean, today, if I would like to create something like that, it would take ages. Today, you just type something out and you'll find the answer for whatever you are looking for. At the time, it wasn't working like that, so it took a lot of time. So I mean, even the basic chat bots, let's call it, took me weeks to create. I mean, it was always like you end up somewhere and you don't know how to move forward from there. You'll have to wait a couple of days till you get to the information you actually need at the moment. So yeah, it was crazy.
That's good though. I keep on saying those formation years, right? The formation of like your robustness of debugging and all that kind of fun stuff to be like, oh wait, this is fun but really hard at the same time. Just kind of like university. Some people treat it that way. As you were saying, what is it? You went to a Finnish university. That's really cool actually in applied informatics. And I am assuming that's kind of like an equivalent of like computer science, software engineering, maybe a bit of like hardware engineering, maybe thrown into that. I'm assuming with a lot of those classes put together. Was that ever, I guess, like the first exposure to other people that were doing as much tech as you were? Because I would imagine that like finding a community of people that does tech at that age especially, it's like, even before I was in uni, I was like, where the hell do I find other people who does tech? I never really asked that question. I'm just like thinking about it. So was that the first time where you just saw other people, like your peers, like on the same group in the same mind wave of building things and trying out things? Or was it not like that at that university?
Well, actually, at the university, I was in a group of people that were more interested maybe in music than in computer science, actually. But yeah, I mean, that was actually the first time where there were actual group of people working on something. So yeah, I mean, community-wise, that was the first time that I was part of a group that had the same interest in computers and in science, other than playing games, of course. So yeah.
Playing games is a big part of it, though.
Sure.
And on that part, even like as we were saying, like university kind of just like flies by for a lot of people, if anything. And eventually, did you have to do like a big project in university, or was that not like a thing where?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a big project. It was more like a solo project that you had to do. But yeah.
Yeah, those are always a fun one because like the biggest highlight every time I talk about projects, like who let the team down. It's always been like who's that one person who's let the whole team down. And I'm not going to answer that question for my team because between us we know who that is. The fun part though, you did mention that after that you ended up doing corporate America, not corporate America, but corporate jobs. That's really like as people that do like studying in software engineering or comps or anything similar, and then doing corporate job. Like it marks us. I remember my first corporate job, but how did that happen? Like where did that I guess opportunity came from, and where was it at in terms of your first I guess full-time software engineering role?
So it's quite funny. I mean, when I dropped off the university, I was just looking for a job, for any job that I could do till I'll start again, because that was the original plan. And the offerings I had at the time was for a Chinese bistro, actually, where I could do a manager. And the other opportunities were from Dell. I had an option to work there as the tech support for German clients, basically. And then the other opportunity came, and that was from IBM, and they were looking for a software developer, let's say. It was really very basic position. It was really just updating the existing pages and stuff like that. But that was something that was really, really interesting for me. And yeah, I was very lucky to get there, actually. With my limited knowledge and no like real world experience or anything. But they've been looking for someone who could think technically, I would say. And I just fit their requirements and I started there. So it was my biggest university, I would say. Just being thrown at something and you have to maintain these pages and create new ones. And yeah, that's what you'll do. And if you'll be good at that, you'll maybe one day be a manager or something. So yeah, the standard corporate ladder.
No, I think that's so super, super exciting in the sense of like, yeah, you laid out your options. You saw what the options were. But even just like sometimes in life, you look at this thing, this opportunity and be like, wait, can I do this? It's always like, I keep on saying nowadays, people say about the imposter syndrome and all that. But at that point, as we were saying, like they were looking for some requirements. Like they weren't just going to pick anybody on that. But do you remember any, I guess, like interview particularities? What I mean by that is that nowadays we do like 50 million coding challenges if anybody wants to get a job in tech and everything. But back then, was it more just like, what do you know about like the cloud? Well, not the cloud, but like server side. What do you know about servers? What do you know about like HTML? Like what did that, I guess, like conversation go? Was it intensive or was it just like you showed some stuff that you wrote and that was pretty much it? Like how did that look like?
I mean, during the interview process, there was actually a case study, basically, where they gave you a website that was broken and you had to fix as many errors as you could in some time frame. So yeah, I was just looking at the code and there were some slashes missing and stuff like that and mistyped elements in the code. I was just fixing that and I fixed quite a lot of those errors there. So yeah, I mean, that was it, basically.
That's so good. That's the part where somebody gives you a Rubik's Cube and like you kind of know how to do a Rubik's Cube and you just like start solving it and like it slowly falls together and you're like, oh wait, this stuff works at the end of the day. So that's so fun. But I mean, obviously, congratulations. I mean, I'm years and years and years later, but congratulations on getting that role at IBM. And as you're saying, this is straight into the web dev world. I keep on saying that like, because people in tech knows that like you could go into so many different categories, right? You go into I guess database management, you could go into infra management, you could go into security, you could go into product engineering, but like more back end side, but that's like, 50 million different things. So you jump into web development and can you just lay out the landscape from back then? I feel like we've spoken maybe a little bit about this, where it's like nowadays you got all the cool frameworks, you got all the Reacts and you got all the Next.js, and you also on the back end you have all these like great Java framework, and then you also have these great Python framework and these great whatever. But back then, like, nah, that's not what it was. So what did those years at IBM look like in a sense of what you work with, building these applications or maybe even just debugging these applications? It seemed painful, but maybe you have some highlights that you can mention in terms of, oh, it wasn't that bad.
I mean, it was quite fun even at the time, and we've been just using the basic FTP client. I was using FileZilla at the time. We've been just downloading the whole chunks of code, like the HTML elements, and there was some code running on the server that was just putting those together. But it was pretty basic. I mean, you could just download the whole IBM section that I was working on directly to a computer and fiddle with the code directly. So there's no automation, no like automated tests, nothing basically. So it was just pure HTML and CSS. And then later, after some time, we started to work also with Flash and some action scripts and stuff like that. And that's when it got a bit more interesting, because we had this first carousel on the website that was just moving the images and it was dynamic. It looked great at the time. So yeah, I mean.
RIP to Flash. I feel like I haven't heard this discussion about Flash in a while, but thanks for bringing it back, in a sense of like it powered so much of the internet for such a long time, and now like it really disappeared off the face of the earth. Just want to take a moment to remember Flash, and I'm so glad that you shared so many great stories on what it gave people: animations, interactivity, all that kind of fun stuff that people could do on their website. But that is actually so exciting. One thing I do want to ask also is maybe back then how teams are structured, in the sense of like nowadays we think about two pizza teams because it's famously coined by somebody, but in the sense of back then, was it mostly solo work where you just like given tickets and you just tackle it on your own? Was there no pair programming? Like what did your I guess like squad look like? Did you even have a squad? What do you make of that?
I mean, the IBM, since they're still trying to keep things very structured and like each team is working on something, I was part of a team that was called STG. It was Systems and Technology Group. And we were just focusing on a certain area of the whole website. And we were just creating the websites for the servers and stuff like that. And basically the team looked like we had 3 product managers, let's say, in today's words. And then there were like 4 programmers. And at the time, there was nothing like sprints or anything like that. It was just we had the internal clients that were requesting something from these product managers, and they were just writing everything down to something that looked pretty similar to Jira, actually. And they were just writing the requirements, go there, change that color, put that text there, and stuff like that. And that's what we've been working with. So there was nothing like pair programming or something too complex there. It was really just monkey business, just typing your keyboard and putting those translations there and changing the images and stuff like that. So
it sounds different, but it also sounds the same. As you're saying, like the flow is pretty similar, right? The tickets come from one way and you have the specs and kind of do it. So I guess we learned maybe a thing or two from the past. I think that's what I keep on saying, is that we do remember a couple of the good things. But the fun part is that like bridging this gap between going from a lot of like web dev and also just like engineering and doing a lot of product stuff today at UptimeRobot, like this gap though, when did that transition started happening? Eventually you didn't do as much engineering, you didn't do as much dev. So from that point, did you jump straight into product management or did you do something else? Like how do we connect that path there?
I mean, that still happens while I was working at IBM, actually. I mean, from the development role, I moved to a quality assurance role, which is weird today, maybe, because usually when you want to program, you start as a quality assurance guy and then you move to the programming. I started the other way around, and I was first programming and then was checking the work of the others. And then from the quality assurance position, I moved to the, it was called web production lead position, but pretty much something like product manager, I would say. And yeah, I was from day to day basically talking directly to the clients and trying to write down the specs for the developers. And it really helped me that I was working as a developer in that specific environment before. So it was easier for me to understand what those clients really need and what really is possible. So that's when it started, but I still loved programming and coding. I just wasn't very satisfied with the scale of programming that I was allowed to do at the IBM. So I was working on a lot of side projects and for the other companies during my time at IBM. And yeah, I've been creating quite interesting websites in my free time, in my spare time, basically, for the external clients. And it got to a point where actually I was earning more from those external clients than from my full-time job. So that's when I decided it's time to end at IBM and move forward. But yeah, I mean, the whole transition from programming through QA to some kind of management happened there.
That's the part where you're saying that all the skills that you kind of pick up from one role to another, right? Of course, like QA got to be attentive, way more attentive than devs. Not saying that devs are not attentive, but QA is another another level of attention, paying close details, to look at them. And then, of course, eventually doing the product side. You kind of brought a lot of that into, I guess, like your own personal projects, as in like you excel at your own personal projects because you get to see all that exposure of like what can go wrong, what can't go wrong. And the fact that you managed to get traction on that is even greater. I know some people who just never got traction on it, but you kind of took that with you and you kind of strode with it basically. Once you kind of get into the zone, I know a lot of people kind of have to like think about, oh, I'm doing like 6 different things. Which one do I focus on? Did you have that moment at that time when you're doing maybe a bit of freelancing that's like, do I just keep on coding? Do I just focus more on the operations/management side? Like eventually there was a direction that you took, I'd imagine. So was it, I guess, obvious for you to be like, this is the path? And what exactly was that path at the end?
Right, actually that happened when I was working for Sajik, another company that's like local Slovak company actually. And they've been developing these navigations and stuff like that for the smartphones. It was actually first offline navigation for iPhone, if I remember correctly. And yeah, I mean, when I finished at IBM, I started at Sajik and I was working on their websites for marketing basically. During the time, I was still working on a lot of projects on my own, and that was the way I always imagined myself where I'll end up. I mean, like really coding and doing nothing else and just playing on my little sandbox, and that's my world. But then something interesting happened, and the company acquired our competitor, and they just asked me whether I think that I'll be able to lead that company that they just acquired. And that was basically the first official product management role that I had. So yeah, I mean, I said, yes, let's try it. I mean, why not? The salary was good and the project was interesting. So yeah, just thought that I'll give it a shot. But it got really interesting. I mean, that was the first time I actually got to see all the aspects of software development, like from the beginning to the end, the whole transitions of the companies and stuff like that, and how the business is actually done. And I really started to enjoy that. And that's when I decided that it's time to really focus on one thing. And that's basically when I stopped coding, basically. So yeah, that was the point. I started really focusing only on product management.
I like that in the sense of like, it's not exactly that it was fully prompted and given to you because you were doing a lot of that even before that happened. But it's kind of like this two different roads that meet together and the opportunity that be like, hey, look, there's this opportunity over there. There's so much to do. Do you want to do it? Not that you were filling a gap more than anything, but it was also the fact that you had the skills to do it. So having that clarity, I wish a lot more people had these like moments to be like, this is the skill set I have. This is exactly the best place I'm going to be at and run with it. So, and yeah, just even that new project, I always keep on thinking about like, sure, acquiring like a competitor on that. Was it hard for you to think about, I guess, like integrations? Because I know nowadays, like we talk about integrations all the time, right? This website has to integrate with another one. And, how did that look like in a sense of like, were you worried that you're not able to integrate the acquired, I guess, like company into your existing one? Or was that not a goal to begin with? Like, were you not tasked to like make any connection between any of that? Because I do know that like, if you give any dev this kind of problem, I consider myself more dev and everything. I'm like, I have to think so much about what is this, what is that? So maybe from your product mindset, anything you could share from when that happened?
I mean, basically when we acquired the company, there wasn't any plan to integrate it with the parent company. It was just, they had really quite a lot of users because that was basically community-based OpenStreetMap navigation. And they just wanted to make sure that they will not like be better one day than the company that they had. So in the beginning, I was just asked to keep things running, maybe introduce some in-app purchases, make the company earn something. But then after some time, it was starting to be a really good product. I mean, it was really selling quite a lot of those in-app products and stuff like that. So it was becoming quite successful. And at this point, there was like this change in the mindset, and there came the idea that okay, this product is working and people are satisfied with these community maps. So let's take those community maps and put them into the parent application, into the Sidekick itself, and let's see where that will take us. So that was the integration part that I was not prepared for at all. It was like, yeah, we have now this full complex navigation, and we've got this parser for the maps, and how do we connect them? And that was quite complex. But I mean, I had a great team at the time, and they were all able to help me with that, and their understanding on how those things works and how those things can work together was just huge. So I was basically just really managing the backlog, basically, of the ideas that they had about how to do it and how to do it better. So yeah, I mean, that happened. And after the merger, actually, I decided that there is nothing much for me to do, because everything was like happening on its own. So that's when I moved to another companies. So yeah.
And even from their perspective, people working with you on the product side with that, is that I think they're kind of glad that you had some engineering background. I think like that's always like a plus, in a sense of like, whether it's guesstimation, whether it's like any part of like just trying to be realistic of what can be done. Like, sure, it's not just like a drag and drop, most of it, whenever you try to build anything. So I think from their perspective, there was a bit of like relief when all that happened. And of course, with all these kind of projects, that product people just like they dabble into everything. And as you were saying, I think you mentioned a bit of marketing during that time, because I feel like that's also very relevant to how a lot of, I guess, the stuff you do today, how you operate, depends on the sense of like what appeals to people and what doesn't appeal to people. So was it mostly only at Sidekick that you did a lot of marketing stuff, or how did that, I guess, like skill set or that kind of vein of qualities I guess you gained control of it, or you got exposed to it more than not?
I mean, in the Sidekick, it was the first time that I was working on something marketing related, I would say. So yeah, I mean, I was just trying to make those performance campaigns running and everything. So that was the first time. But then after that, actually in the startup companies that I was working for, you know how it goes at startup, you know how to do the campaign. So yeah, you'll do the campaign. So nobody's asking anything else about that. So yeah, I was working on marketing later on. But yeah, I mean, Sidekick was the first one.
No, I could definitely see that happening after having working in many startups. I've covered for a couple of random stuff. I've covered a lot on the data side to be like, hey, Perry, could you run like a bunch of queries? I'm like, yeah, sure, totally. I love SQL. But also on the other side, like Jira as well. I've definitely written a bunch of ticket. I did a bit of Figma as well for a while, and I was like, why am I doing Figma at the end of the day? But those are definitely some cool stories that you got in terms of being able to expose. I don't know what tools you were using back then, whether it's, I don't know, Google Analytics, or even more like the Mixpanel, whatever the SEO engines that they always try to get the best keywords out there. But eventually, I think that's the fun part, where, I mean, like, of course, life goes on and there's so much skills and so much fun stories. You eventually end up at UptimeRobot. Was that intentional? Or as in, like, of course, your journey of like engineering, product, marketing, and like working with so many startups, project, even your freelancing days and all that kind of stuff. How did you ended up stumbling, whether it's stumbling or anything like that, with UptimeRobot? Because of course that's a big focus of what you do today.
So before UptimeRobot, I was working for 5 years at the biggest job board in Slovakia. It's called Profesia, and yeah, I was working there, and it started as a relatively small company. It was just a small team of developers working on a project. But then later, as it got bigger and we had some merger with a company from Czech Republic, so I didn't enjoy working there anymore, and it was like too corporate for my taste at the time. And that's when actually a colleague from Sidekick reached out, and he said that they were looking for a CPO for the UptimeRobot, and whether I would like to give it a shot. So I was, yeah, why not? I mean, let's try that. I saw the product, and at the time, it was over a year ago. The product was in its old version, and it looked, I dare to say, terrible. It was just this old table layout. Everything was grayish and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of potential there, because it was really used by a huge community of people, and those people loved the product. But it was really old, and it needed a redesign. It needed some new input there. So I just saw the product. I talked to the guys working on that, and I just saw the huge opportunity and huge potential there. So I said, yes, let's try that. And yeah, that's how I'm here.
because your mission was to add color to a gray page. No, I'm kidding. Of course, you were doing way more, way more than that back then and even today, though. Maybe this is a random slight tangent. I'll get back onto exactly what UptimeRobot does and everything. But the tangent is, how would you describe engineers around the Slovakia, Czech Republic area? Because sometimes people ask me this question. I was very fortunate to have worked in the UK and in Hong Kong and Canada and in the US. And people were like, oh, how would you, I guess, describe the engineers? Are they smarter in XYZ area? And my answer has always been like, the best engineers, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are. There's always the best engineers up there that are just very intelligent. But if you talk about concentrations and people that are very proud that they're from Stanford or from Berkeley or whatever it is, like, of course, the Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, you'll have more people coming from San Jose State with their comp sci degrees and all that kind of stuff. That's my answer to it. So I think like my tangent to you was more like, how would you describe the software engineers or like a typical software engineer in Czech Republic or Slovakia or around there?
I mean, both countries, Slovakia and Czech Republic, both are quite small, right? So to find a good software engineer here is maybe a bit more complex than it would be abroad. But still, I mean, we've got some huge capacities here, people who can really work independently. And quite a lot of folks have like some background experience with their own projects. So they are very talented, and to stay here and to make a living here with software development, it may be a bit more challenging, a bit more complex, because obviously the salaries are lower here. So anyone who is good enough or think that it's good enough is trying to work for a company that's located abroad. So really to find good developers that want to stay here and work for a company that's around this area, it's hard. But once you find the right group of people that are just not like hopping from job to job till they'll be able to learn something better, it's amazing experience, because those people are really focused and are trying their best to keep the product running. I mean, their primary motivation is to create the product that's as good as it could be. I mean, that's their primary like motivation for doing what they're doing.
Oh yeah, I absolutely believe that. Even from my experience of working with so many people based in different parts of Europe and around the world, like Bulgaria, Ukraine, and even just any country, like even Poland back then, like once you figure out the challenge and the technicality and trying to solve it, it's amazing to see that it doesn't matter what exactly your full background is or what your aspiration is, that like you have a technical problem to solve. And I've definitely worked with so many great people in Europe, definitely building stuff like that. So eventually, of course, a lot of that is powering UptimeRobot nowadays. Not only the squad is absolutely lean and everything, but I definitely want to hear maybe like, by the time you joined, what did that look like? Of course, you joined as the chief product officer at UptimeRobot, and you already described a little bit what it looked like, but maybe in the sense of like, what were the challenges you were looking ahead? What were the products available? Because of course nowadays, like UptimeRobot has so many products. You could check your SSLs if they're about to expire. You could check, of course, the uptime of your website. You could check when your domain is expiring. You have like different ping features that you could definitely keep up with. So there's like definitely useful arrays of items nowadays. But back then, what did that look like when you joined?
I mean, I joined just a year ago, so it's not that far away. So I mean, in terms of functionality, nothing that much changed. I mean, we just reworked the whole front end and the front part. So it was built from scratch basically, but we are just trying to create the functionality once again in the like new application. So we are just basically refactoring what was already done. And we are trying to add some new features to that, but that's getting more and more complex since the product nowadays is quite mature. So it's really hard to develop some new features that we would like to have there. So right now, for example, we are working on the multi-location checks. So it's like you'll be able to check your service from different geographical locations. And to do that, it was impossible using our old monitoring core we had. So we started a new project and we are just writing the whole core from scratch. So, I mean, the goal was to have the new code that will work pretty much exactly the same as the old one, but better. So we'll be able to do some new stuff there, some new functionalities there, which was pretty much impossible in the old one. So yeah, I mean, in terms of functionality, not that much changed actually since I'm here.
Gotcha. But the improvement are very necessary. Kim was saying that if you have a piece of code or a system that can't be extended, like what's the point? You'll always be stuck in that kind of like time frame or like that snapshot. And now, as you're saying, there's a purpose for rewriting this, is so that you could tack on, you could improve it, you could make your Ford into a better Ford or whatever it is. So, on that aspect though, in the sense of, I guess, describe me like your target audience or your typical user, in the sense of, I feel like that's very important for, I keep on saying that these products, for me, it makes sense to me, right? Because I've dealt with so many different products. I would be like, oh, I wish this could do that. I wish it could literally just tell me when my server is down. I mean, of course, there's products for that, but maybe from your perspective of describing, like, who is UptimeRobot catered for? And I guess, like, is that always the goal? Was it catered to be so that my mom could use it, kind of thing, or what exactly would you describe as, your best target audience at the moment, or your best crowd, your community?
UptimeRobot is this unique position because it's the most widely used monitoring service in the world, and that's thanks to it's a huge free plan. So I mean, anyone can just sign up and start using that for whatever use case you would like to use it for. So whether you are like independent web developer and would like to just make sure that my websites are running and I'm just trying new stuff, new services, new products that are out there, you can definitely do that and it will not cost you anything. And the customer, like the paying customer for UptimeRobot, is somebody who started just like that. Somebody who was curious, somebody who was just trying stuff around and discovered something like this. And then later, when he moved on with his career and found the use cases that he could use the monitoring service for, then he discovered that, yeah, maybe I would need some Slack integration. Maybe I would need more than 50 monitors, which are included in the free plan. And from there, you just move on. So, I mean, if you would ask anyone else about the target audience for the monitoring service, obviously it's DevOps guys. But yeah, I mean, since there is kind of different approach with the UptimeRobot, and we are really just offering huge package for free. I mean, anyone can try that, and you can find the use cases. I mean, I was talking to a guy using UptimeRobot quite recently, actually, and he was using that to monitor his parents and whether the devices were responding from their home network. So he was able to tell when they were home and when they weren't home. So, I mean, there are easier ways to do that, but it was just really this geeky, techie guy who just liked to dive deeper into that and just was trying different ways to do things. And that's actually what he was using it for. So, yeah, I mean, we've got this huge product with many, many sub-products, as you said, and you can find your own use case there.
Such a great example. I feel like this is, once you give the possibility, as long as you give a possibility for a geek like me, like everybody out there, to play around with it, I think people will find good use case on that. For maybe, I don't know if I want to ask this now or later, but in terms of like APIs, like what exactly was the goal, or is the goal going forward, in the sense of, like, I talk about APIs because everything is an integration nowadays. Everything is going into the API as a business and all that kind of stuff. But of course, there's a lot of visual aid on UptimeRobot that is super helpful. Like UI, that's definitely great for everything. But maybe from your perspective, in the sense of what you make of not only just UptimeRobot, but then this world of like UI and then API and all that, like what exactly would you say is the ideal landscape for anybody in this game at the end of the day?
So using UptimeRobot is possible completely via the UI, but we've got the API option, obviously. And there is a lot of use cases for the API. I mean, you can connect whatever you want to directly to the UptimeRobot, and you can do whatever you want to do with the product itself. And actually, regarding the API, we are always trying to improve that, because we've got this old API, which was really just focused on people that were working in maybe bigger corporations or stuff like that. And they just needed something to connect to their existing systems and stuff like that. But that's changing. I mean, quite recently, I started to play with smart home solutions and stuff like that. And I discovered that somebody from community created a plugin for UptimeRobot into the Home Assistant. And basically, what you can do from there is using the API that is provided by us and was built with completely different purpose originally. Somebody created something that can help you with your home automations. And what I'm doing right now, for example, is that if my website go down, my lights in my room just starts to flashing. So it's like, you can really build anything using the API, and even the things that you will never even think about. I mean, yeah, flashing lights in your room if the website is down. It sounds crazy maybe, but I mean, I just really love the possibilities and the opportunities that these integrations and deeper integrations just gives you.
You gave a very scary example. No, I'm kidding. You gave an absolute terrifying example of what it could do. But I think this is the part where it's like, if you don't give enough liberty to your users to do it, that's when you don't really get as much exposure, as much traction, as much like interest into it. Because what's the point of having a very inflexible product? And you don't want people to use their creativity behind it. I feel like that's very counterintuitive. And you guys are a great example of letting your community speak and build whatever it wants. And speaking of that, though, that's also a fun part, especially not only the product side, but maybe like more the operations side, if anything, is feature requests in terms of every company builds things, and the thing is like the hardest part is prioritizing and figuring out what to build first or what to not build at all, if anything. So with a product like UptimeRobot, the community is strong, your team seems obviously strong. I'm going to dive into that in a second as well. How do you gauge what work should be tackled first or not? Do you prioritize, like, let's say, I don't know, the CEO just comes up with a feature, is that immediately on top of the list? Or is it more like a community driven part where it's like, oh, so many people are asking for this feature, whether you have like a upvote system or anything, you have 7 different streams, 8, 9, 10 different streams of work. How do you look at those and categorize what gets built or what gets put in the roadmap?
Right. So we've got like those ideas coming from every side, I would say. Of course, the CEO comes from time to time with his great ideas and something that must be there, and then we are just trying to prioritize it somehow, somewhere. But the biggest source of the ideas and the things that are actually getting built is this community board we've got. We are running on Node.io. And basically, anyone who is using our product can just write their ideas and suggestions there. And the great thing about Node is that anyone can also upvote those ideas. So in the end of the day, I've got a list of the ideas with their upvotes, and I know what community really wants and what we should focus on. I mean, it's not always too easy because those feature requests that are appearing there are sometimes way more complex than something that we can actually do in a reasonable time frame. But we are trying to prioritize everything according to the list we've got from actual customers. We've got also Discords running and stuff like that. So we are just really getting the feedback from every side and trying to prioritize things that we are working on based on that.
I could definitely see that you have to have some input from the community, in a sense of like, I feel like a lot of times if you don't do that, you're just shooting in the dark and trying to figure out, we're going to spend 6 months, 8 months building this feature, and by the time you release it, it's like, wait, never mind. Literally nobody needs it at the end of the day. Maybe something that is interesting at UptimeRobot is that there's so many products going on at the moment, and that probably requires a lot of collaboration, not just between product and engineering, but also maybe other parts of the team as well. So once you have this many streams of products and everything, maybe from your end, in the sense of like, how do you keep track of, I guess, who to pull in, what stakeholder to pull in? Maybe the design team, maybe the marketing team, whatever it is, maybe the finance team. Like, is there a framework that you use to keep track of everything, in terms of you have the bunch of feature requests coming in, and maybe this feature request is more relevant to this business stakeholder within the team? What do you do with that then?
Basically, how I work is that I've got all the feature requests and all the ideas written down in Notion. I've got just this huge list of the ideas and features that we would like to work on. And then we've got the prioritization score. And basically, that's just a mathematical formula that's just like trying to give you one number based on which you can sort those features according to their priority and impact and stuff like that. So the input numbers are, as I said, impact for the customer, impact for the business, reliability, scalability, and stuff like that. And you're just really trying to put those numbers as well as you could with the information you've got. Based on that, you end up with the final score. And then at each planning, we are just going through the list and taking things that are up there and trying to work on them.
I like that method just because I've worked enough with product managers. And the thing is, like, the RICE framework usually comes through for most of it. Like, the reach, impact, confidence, divide by effort. I feel like that's a very basic level of how to do a lot of these prioritization stuff. But those conversations is something that if you do well, you definitely save yourself so much time down the line, and you save yourself so much conversations down the line doing that. So I'm glad that you shared your framework, just because this kind of pipeline is, I guess, really relevant nowadays if you want any strong technical engineering operations going on. And not only that, part of a strong, I guess, like framework of, I guess, like product management, but on the side that you were saying how the team nowadays is efficient. I feel like that's something that not every team could say, not every company out there. I mean, look at all the big tech that are saying like, oh, we're not efficient enough, we're not lean enough, like, and then you all see all that kind of stuff happening. Sorry. So I guess, like, I'm using all these words, right? But would you describe it the same way as I'm saying as a team, just because like the community is so strong and there's so many users and everything? Like, how would you say your team is today? Are you the right amount of people? Are you not enough people? Are you efficient? Like, I just want to take a moment, because obviously talking to product people, it's such a good time to share each side of the world. Just because on the dev side, it's always like, we don't have enough people. We never have enough people, even though technically sometimes we have enough people. So what's your side on this?
So our team consists of 6 developers, so that's all we have. And we've got this project that's obviously quite huge. But yeah, I mean, it never happened since I started here that there would be somebody who wouldn't know what to do next. So I really like the flow of the team. So whenever there's something needed to be done, it's done. It's just like you cannot maybe work on as many things as you would like to. And we've got this huge backlog just getting bigger and bigger from day to day. But still, I mean, if there's something waiting for way too long, maybe it wasn't that important, and a few months later, you still just discard the idea. So I would say that we are at a sweet spot right now. Maybe I always could have a couple of more guys working on the product, obviously. But this spot where we are right now, it's something where we can still move forward without doing things that aren't necessary. So yeah, I mean, we're very, very small team. And of course, if you'll give me 10 more developers, I'll be more than happy. And for the next 6-7 months, we'll be releasing new updates every month. But I'm not sure if that's the right way to do things. Because right now, we have to really think about what's really important and what's really going to make an impact. And based on that, we are not just flooding the product with unnecessary things that will just distract the users. And in the end, maybe 5 to 10 guys will use it. And everything that we work on is really impactful, and it's used by at least hundreds.
I think one of the keyword, or the word that pops in my mind, is like this identity of being able to be efficient, and the identity of everybody making contributions left and right, and that every, I guess, like push that you put out there is impactful. I think like the luxury of knowing that there's a high chance your next release is going to be impactful, not everybody gets to do it. And I think the fact that you guys are such a lean team, and you know every line of code is it matters. That's always something that is absolutely fun to see. Which is why I keep on saying that, I'm lucky to be asking you about all these questions about UptimeRobot and everything. But one thing that I do know a lot of product people think about, and a lot of Perry think about, a lot of, I guess, like customer support think about, is the incident management side. This is the part where being able to be reactive to, I mean, even the product that you work with, all this uptime monitoring and everything, that's very much embedded in this concept of like incident management, be able to handle that. So maybe my question here is more like the dog food part, the dog fooding. I don't know if you heard of this concept of, I'm sure you did, you're already nodding and everything, but for those who are not familiar with the dog fooding part in the world of tech, is basically use your products. Whatever you're building, you got a dog food. I don't know where it came from. It's just testing your own products, basically. Like, you just gotta be able to use it. So from your end, how do you tie that with your own incident management, or what does that look like? Does it help you even more? Does it let you dive deeper into like more edge cases that you're thinking about? So maybe the general question is more like incident management. What's your philosophy behind it? Just because I know a lot of product people have to encounter it. They don't want to encounter it. They have to encounter it at the end of the day.
Right. So the incident is something that everybody would like to pretend that those just doesn't happen, but they does. And when it does, you need to react as quickly as possible. And I mean, you asked about the dog fooding. So I'm using the UptimeRobot, for example, for monitoring my own server that's running my home automations. I mentioned earlier, and it's nothing critical, but still, I mean, it's nice to know that when I'm somewhere outside, and my Raspberry stops responding, then I know that the air conditioner will not turn on and my cat at home will be too hot. So it's just something that I'll receive a notification and I know that something is happening. And when there comes a time when I'm thinking whether I should go home already or I've got still a few hours left, I know that I probably should to fix that so everything is fine at home and then I can move forward. And I mean, as I said, this is not critical implementation of the product or the incident management, but it works pretty much the similar way in bigger implementations in companies where there's just something happening and it might be not as critical at the point, but if you are able to respond fast to that, you might avoid much bigger problems, much bigger losses and stuff like that. So if there is a local eShop and it stops running at the night, you might notice, and next day you just come to work and see that nothing is working and you sold nothing that day and you spent just a few hours fixing that. But if you'll receive the notification and the incident actually, when it happens during the night, you'll have a chance to respond to that and to do something about it. So yeah, that's my take.
I like the fact that you're saying for anybody who deals with instant magic, you got to give yourself a chance. I feel like that's always been a thing where it's like, if everything goes under your nose and nothing gets picked up, then of course you're not giving yourself a chance to solve anything. Because I've definitely been in that position way too many times to be like, wait, we've never actually kept track of this. Like this thing could have done anything. We never kept track of any of that. So that's a good philosophy at the end of the day for that. So thanks for sharing your approach on that. One thing I don't know if I could actually even ask this question. I feel like I do a lot of this stuff on the show anyways, but it's more like the tech behind it. I love talking about tech all the time. Of course, the UI nowadays, I'm sure using more modern framework, but for me to geek out is that there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, whether it's like jobs that you got to move like data from one to the other, or just like some polling jobs, or just some queues that you have behind there, and just like a bunch of stuff to keep everything live at the moment. You may have, I don't know, like maybe a single monolith in the back that runs everything. I don't know. So this is the part where I don't know if I could ask this question, but how is UptimeRobot built in the sense of like, is it just one monolith in the backend that powers like your website and that's pretty much it? Or how much can you, I don't know how much can you say to it, but I'm always curious about this.
So obviously it's not just one thing running everything, and we've got these components and each component is responsible for different aspect of the product. And yeah, I mean, we've got this notification part, we've got the core part, and everything is hosted on different server, and everything is doing its purpose. So yeah, it might happen that something will not work, but it doesn't mean that everyone will receive a phone call, hey, your server is down because our core is down. So that's something that's just not happening. I mean, we've got like obviously separate servers for monitoring, and we've got like a whole bunch of them to actually do the work. So if there is a problem with one of them, of course, the group of people around that one server, that one instance will experience some issues until we'll fix that. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that if something goes wrong, everything goes down.
That's a very, I guess, like educated, smart approach today. Hopefully everybody would have said the same answer if I asked this to most people, that like, please don't have a single thing in the backend that runs everything. Not that it's bad. Some people have like a massive, I don't know, Ruby on Rails server that just powers everything. And surprisingly, that works. Don't get me wrong, that works. But it's just so fun to hear about how different companies, different tech companies operate with their architecture at the end of the day. Any technologies that you, the team, the tech team are loving at the moment? I listed like Ruby on Rails, whether it's like Next.js or anything like that. Is there any fun technologies that do you guys prioritize modern technologies? Because I know even as we were talking from back then of like, we didn't have anything, the vanilla stuff, the vanilla JS, the jQuery from back then, even that's sort of new maybe. Like, yeah, what are you guys embracing at the moment in terms of technology?
So we are working with the React mostly, but there's a bunch of other technologies used. So I mean, for example, the landing pages are using completely different technology than the actual product. Then we've got a separate product for the checkout, and that's also written on a completely different technology. Also, the core itself is like separate. So there's really a bunch of technologies and a bunch of frameworks that we are using. So I wouldn't say that we've got a favorite one. We are just still trying to find the best technology for the problem that we are trying to solve, and something that will be most flexible and will allow us to do more things in the future. So
No, that makes sense. I even as devs, like I feel like we don't really marry ourselves to a single like language, for example. Like I don't think I've ever heard anybody like be like, "Oh, I'm definitely married to like Scala," or like I'm definitely tied to Java at the end. I don't think anybody has ever said they love Java. But anyways, that's for another conversation. For the never. One thing I probably this is I guess like more on the outlook more than anything is that a lot of companies think about new product versus improving existing product, or both at the end of the day. Is there, I'm not saying to like lay me out your next like 3 years or whatever, but more like this acumen of having seen so many different projects and so many different, I guess, like decisions, especially on the product side. How does one approach this? Even if you're talking to a dev, even if you're talking to another product manager, like how does one approach this vertical versus horizontal approach about new products, new feature, new development coming from a tech company?
I mean, there are two possible approaches, I would say, and one is purely business approach, where you just reach the peak, and from there it makes no sense to do anything else because you know that it will never get significantly better. So that's one approach, and what we are trying to do is, since we are close to that peak, I would say, we know that there is really a bunch of people that are relying on the product. So we are still trying to improve what we've got and make it even better to keep the position. Because if you'll just let it be, it will just fall down and there will be another competition, another somebody who will do the similar thing that you did. And in the end, it might end up being slightly better in some aspects and you'll just lose it completely. So yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's always good to keep focusing on the existing products, keep on improving them as much as it's at least viable.
I think the way I came out saying that this like 80-20 rule, I don't like 80-20 rule is always adapted very differently to everybody, but at least to me to be like, capture whatever 80% of the essence, capture 80% of the functionality of it, and then if you can't afford, then of course like start something in parallel after. But I think other people treat this 80-20 rule very differently. But either way, I feel like the idea is, yeah, you're saying there's a certain peak that exists out there, and then just use whatever information, whether it's data, whether it's any kind of like, I mean, of course, there's a own how do people call this, like your own little judgment sometimes. Like some people would make crazy calls and be like, that's not based on data. It's just on an acumen and it works out. So that's the other fun aspect of not only just product, but just working in this field. This is all awesome. I want to bring this part back to you, to Tomas, just because like keeping track of all this is nearly impossible. And my question usually is more in the sense of what tools, what technologies, what's your favorite apps that helps you live your life and do your job? I know you mentioned maybe like Notion before. I know some people are diehard absolute Notion lovers. I've used it a little bit in the sense of like I'm not a power user of Notion, but I'm using that example. But are there any other similar, or you maybe you don't even like Notion? I don't know. But in the sense of what runs your world, in the sense of what apps do you use? What apps does your team use? Are you a Slack team? Are you a Teams team? Like what are those kind of like fun little tidbits that you could share with everyone?
So we're a Slack team actually, and I mean the two core products that the whole company is using are Notion and Slack. And anything else you would like to use, it's completely up to you. So we don't like restrict that you have to, I don't know, use Outlook and Word and stuff like that. That's completely up to you. And from my perspective, what I'm using actually, it's other than the Notion and Slack, obviously. I like to write notes by my hand. It's just something that you cannot replace. So I'm just writing everything on my tablet, and I've got this Good Notes application, and I've just got a couple of journals, couple of like sheets there, and I'm just trying to organize everything there. So yeah, that's for the one thing. Other than that, I mean, there's nothing just too crazy. I mean, obviously, I'm using the calendar to know about things that are going to happen. In Slack, I'm using Save for Later quite often because I can then set the reminders and notifications. I'm just trying to keep it simple because what I found out is that if you're using too much of those products and too much of those things that should help you, it will get just too complicated, and in the end, it's just more complex and you don't know what you should be focusing on.
I'm with you. I'm with you. The fact that I have to be concise with the number of apps that I've downloaded on my phone, on my computer, like I'm very concise on that. Maybe this extension question is, what do you use for your to-do list? Because I like how you already mentioned like save for later. Like that's super useful. And I use mark as unread a lot on Slack. Like for me, it's always mark as unread. I would read it and be like, I will come back to this, and mark as unread. So maybe more particularly, I know a lot of people use this different way. I know there's one person who does to-do lists on their Google Calendar. They just write everything like at the top to be like to do, and I don't do that. I have a TXT file. I've mentioned this previously where I just have a TXT file and I have two categories. It's like technically four categories, but it's two categories. One of them is 5-minute tasks, and the other one is non-5-minute task. And within the 5-minute task, there's the today and there's like the not today. So technically it's four categories, right? If it's 5 minute and today, then obviously it's getting done immediately. If it's less than 5 minutes, but today, I kind of think about it, and then the rest is probably like backlog, if anything. That's my system, a simple TXT file like that. But do you have like a note-taking app, or what exactly is helping you out there?
Yeah, so I mentioned those good notes, but I'm using that mostly for the meeting minutes and for writing down the ideas that I might have or sketching something out. But for the to-do list, actually, I'm using the application that came with my computer. It's just this to-do list on the Mac. And I'm just trying to write down the things that I want to do that day. And what I'm trying to do actually right now is to write the list of the things that I want to do at that day in the morning. So I'm not trying to put those things far in advance, because I know that I'll just forget about it. I'll not open the to-do list or something, and it will just get obsolete, and then I'll be like, yeah, I forgot about that. So I really just in the morning, I just sit down, have my coffee, and write down the things that I have to do at the day. And you are pretty precise also with the estimates at that point. So you know that, okay, I've got these 10 things. That's not doable. I can do maybe 6, 7 of them. So you can just put a line somewhere, and you know that this will be done today. And the rest you have to transform to something else. Because if it will stay in my to-do list, I know that I'll not get back to that. So I'll just create a Notion tasks. I'll just write something to someone or something like that. So it will get... So it will be reminded later to me somehow. So if I'll ask somebody about that, and I'll just mute the channel for the rest of the day, I know that he will respond to me, and in the morning, next day, I can just get back to that. I've got more information, I can move forward from there. So I'm just trying really to keep those to-do lists as short as possible and as accurate as possible.
I love that thought process, because I definitely have the same thought process at some point. And my solution to that is I do 2 commits every day. One in the morning to commit my to-do list at the beginning of the day, and one commit to end the day, of course, to be like which one is done, which is not. And I use the Git history a lot for that file. And you can see it's just like, it's really dumb things that you cross off on it. So, but yeah, thanks for sharing a lot of that. I keep on saying that everybody has a way to work, especially the way you were saying efficiency and just having so many things to look over. I think maybe this part of like, what can you tell people that are venturing, whether intentionally into product or maybe away from it, in the sense of like there's the struggles of leading product, there's the fun part of leading product at the end, and especially how your path, of course, going from engineering into that, there's a lot of influences behind it. So maybe for anybody, whether they're an eng today or a PM or anything like that, what advice would you have with like this kind of jumping from one to the other, or maybe where did the love come from for doing one more than the other?
I would say that you have to try everything. That's my approach, at least. And you'll just find a thing that suits you the most. I mean, that's the way to do it. I mean, my original idea was that I must be a software developer and I'll end up with that. But that didn't happen. And I tried product management, and I'm more than happy that I'm doing what I'm doing at this point. And that wouldn't happen if I was maybe too afraid, or if I would avoid trying things. So since I tried all the aspects of the product life cycles, let's say, I found my spot in this whole process, and that's what I'm doing. So that's what I would recommend.
Sold. Perry's going to become a product manager. In the best way possible. I think everything that I do has been absolutely great, and everything that we shared has been absolutely great, in the sense of like, I keep on telling people I use these conversations to learn, right? I'm a better engineer after today, after talking to you. So I just say on my end, thank you so much for being on the show. And of course, the important part is, where can people follow you and UptimeRobot? Not only, I do know you also publish a couple of writing blogs here and there as well, but yeah, where can people find you and UptimeRobot?
So as mentioned, we've got this blog section where we are just publishing new articles quite regularly. And other than that, I'm on all the social known to man, I would say. But I'm not posting too much there. But I'm trying. I'll get better.
And we'll keep you on that. But of course, all the links will be shared in the description notes down below, so definitely check them out. I'll be sharing those for sure over there. But I can't say this enough at the end of the day. But honestly, thank you so much for sharing so many stories on the show. And I keep on saying that if people haven't seen the community, if haven't seen the community board and everything, like go check it out with UptimeRobot, just because it's one of those tools, those developer tools, those really fun technologies that not many people get to experience at the end of the day and to hear more about. So on behalf of myself and everyone, Tomas, thank you so much again for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I will catch the rest of you on the next one. See you later. And that was Tomas Koprusak, Chief Product Officer at UptimeRobot. All the links are shared in the description notes below. Go check them out. If you would like to be on Podcast Written by a Software Engineer, reach out to us. Just email contact@perrytiu.com. Can't wait to have you on the show. Once again, thank you so much for listening to Podcast Written by a Software Engineer. Don't forget to hit the follow button on your podcast app and leave us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's completely free. And if you want to tell your friends about Podcast Written by a Software Engineer, that's totally cool as well. Anyways, I am Perry Tiu, and I'll catch you on the next one. Big love.